ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाखया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So we find these prayers which are offered by the living entity in the womb of his mother. So in the previous prayer, the living entity was praying that it is by the causeless mercy that even though he is 10 months old, he is awakened to the consciousness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it is because of that he is able to now pray even within the womb of his mother. So, he said that because of this causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord, who is the friend of all the fallen souls in this material world, there is no other way that I can express my gratitude than to pray with just folded hands. So here in today's prayer, the living entity is further extending his gratitude towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead, wherein he is comparing that there are other living entities who are also born in the womb of their mother and who also come out from the womb of the mother to be born in this material world, but their body is not as much valuable as this body in which I am now able to pray unto you. So he is comparing the different kinds of bodies, and the body we have obtained in human form of life. So this comparison is very, very important. Prabhupada used to say, and we were seeing also in the previous verses, one of the words which was used by the living entity is Kripanadhi. Kripanadhi means miser, who has miserly intelligence. And Prabhupada explains what is the meaning of that miserly intelligence. You have got all the money with you, which you can utilize it properly. But if someone has all the money and still he does not utilize that money, he is called as Kripana, miser. So similarly, this human form of life is equipped with all the facilities to realize God. with all the facilities to come out of this entanglement of materialistic life. And still, if we do not utilize this human form of life, then we are miserly. So here, very beautiful explanation is given by Srila Prabhupada, which is described in the Vedic literature. The human form of life is compared to the plant which has fructified fully. So, the fructifying flower, it has 3 different stages. One is in the form of bud, when the seed has just sprouted. Next is when it is blooming, it is just beginning to bloom, and then it is full-fledged, fully grown with aroma and beauty. In the earlier stage, when it was in the bud, when it was blooming, just beginning to bloom, there was no aroma, there is not so much beauty. Whereas, when it has become fructified, completely flowered, it becomes so beautiful and very aromatic. Correct? This is the example given in the Vedic literature to compare human form of life. Other lower species like plant forms of life is something like just in the budding stage. Animal forms of life is something like just blooming, where consciousness can be observed, pain and pleasure can be observed, but they have not completely bloomed. Human form of life is a fully blossomed stage of consciousness, wherein we have the facility of understanding the importance of this life and utilize this life to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Self, the Supreme Lord, the world, the interrelation between them. All of them can be understood only with this blossomed consciousness. In the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a conversation between Krishna and Uddhava. So there the Lord is giving some very important instructions to Uddhava. So there is a very nice verse which explains the importance of this human form of life, specifically in this middle planetary system of Earth. So there Lord Krishna says, Swargino api etam icchanti lokam niryanas tatha. So there are 2 types of residents. One is the residents of higher planetary system, and then the residents of lower planetary system. Higher planets are called Swarga. So Swarginaha means the residents of heavenly planet. So Swargino api, even though one is a resident of heavenly planet, they also etam icchanti lokam. they also desire to be born in this earthly planet. Lokam is this earthly planet. Niryinas tatha, and Niryinaha means the residents of hell. Tatha means similarly or in the same way. Why? Why do they desire? So, this human form of life is desired by even the residents of heavenly planet and the residents of even hellish planet. Because sadhakam gnana bhakti bhyam ubhayam tad asadhakam. That means it is only in this human form of life one can gain knowledge and become equipped with devotional service, which otherwise is not possible in these two residential places of heaven and hell. What happens when one is too much absorbed in material happiness or too much absorbed in material distress? Both are obstacle for spiritual progress. When one is too much absorbed in material happiness, then he thinks, why do I require to become spiritualized? What is the necessity for me to take to spiritual life? Because he is absorbed in material happiness. So the residents of Swargaloka, like Indra, they are too absorbed, even though that form of life is considered to be a higher grade of life than human form of life. But still, there is disadvantage. Even though there are more material facilities, longer life, so much distress is not there, they become absorbed in so-called happiness and forget the real goal of life. We would have seen when people are happy in their material life, they think, why go to temple, why it is required? Going to temple is meant for people who are suffering. They will go to the temple and they will pray to the Lord, my dear Lord, I am suffering from this problem, please get me rid of this. Isn't it? I am having financial difficulties, please solve this problem. I am having some, the astrologers are telling that I am having Shani, isn't it? So they go to temple. So people think, if I am happy, why I require to go to temple? So the similar mentality is there even in Swargaloka. When they are too much absorbed in material comforts of life, they don't remember God. Similarly, when they are too much absorbed in distress of life, too much distress, they also don't remember God. That's why if we go to people and ask people, why don't you come to temple? They will tell you, Swami ji, papi pet ka sawal hai. Correct? अरे पहले पेट नहीं भरा है, I have nothing to eat. I have to struggle to even earn my livelihood and you are telling me come to the temple. Isn't it? So you can see this. When people are in too much distress or too much material happiness, it is a disadvantage for progressing in spiritual life. So this earthly planet is suitable because here there is mixture of happiness and distress. Neither there is happiness like the Swargalokas, nor is the distress like in the hellish planet of life. especially in the human form of life. If somebody has obtained human form of life, then actually it is very advantageous. So sometimes we wonder why even Devatas like to be born as humans. So Lord Krishna is telling Uddhava, this is the reason that why even Devatas, they want to be born as human beings. Because this gives a great advantage for self-realization. This human form of life is very, very nicely conceived by the Supreme Lord, equipped with all facilities to become God conscious. That is the meaning. Then, later on, again, after few more verses, Lord Krishna explains to Uddhava further importance of this human form of life. Why is he saying that this human form of life is desired even by the demigods? So there Krishna says, Nardeham adyam sulabham sudurlabham. He says, this human form of life, Nardeham, which looks like that I have obtained without so much of endeavor, correct? It looks like Sulabham. Sulabham means effortlessly, without so much effort, I have obtained this human form of life. This is Adyam. This is source of all favorable results. This human form of life, which one may think I have obtained it effortlessly, is actually source of all favorable results. And it is actually Sudurlabham. Durlabham means rare. Sudurlabham means very, very rare. So this human form of life is very rare. Because we know that there are 84 lakh species of life and very few human species of life. 4 lakh human species of life is there. And practically even in that, sometimes we find there are uncivilized who live their life just like an animal. So, to get this human form of life itself is after so much of evolution of the consciousness that one comes to this stage of obtaining this human form of life. So Krishna is describing this, why this is so important. Plavam sukalpam. Plavam means this is like a boat. This is like a ship. This human form of life can be compared to a very nicely made ship. Sukalpam means extremely suitable for its purpose, for the purpose for which it was designed. So that means human form of life is designed for a purpose. There is a purpose behind making this human form of life. That is very essential. Because Lord Krishna is saying, actually, this can be utilized like a ship. Plavam. Guru Karnadharam. And if one is fortunate, then one can take guidance from the captain who is the bona fide spiritual master. Because even if you have a very good ship, if there is no direction to your ship given by an experienced captain, it will be lost. You will not be able to cross over that ocean. So this material world is called Bhavabdhim. It is ocean of birth and death. Bhava means to take birth. Abdi means it is an ocean. So, Krishna says further, Maya anukulena nabhaswata iritam. And if this boat is further propelled, it is pushed by favorable wind, then it becomes very easy. Imagine if there is a good captain, you have a good ship, but if the wind is unfavorable, it becomes very difficult. You cannot cross over if there is unfavorable wind. So, the words of the Supreme Lord in the Vedic literatures is like that favorable wind. So we can take shelter of the captain, we can take shelter of the Vedic literatures, then it becomes very, very easy. Puman bhavabdhim. One can easily cross over this ocean of bhava, birth and death. And then Krishna says, Nataret, if somebody does not cross over, even after obtaining this human form of life, sa atmaha, he is knowingly committing suicide. It's knowingly committing suicide. So, this is the importance of this human form of life actually. There is another important verse again in 11th Canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes about how one should utilize this human form of life before death arrives. So this is in context. Prabhupada quotes this very important verse from 11th Canto many times. And in one of the very interesting contexts, Prabhupada quotes this. Narada is preaching to King Prachin Barhi. King Prachin Barhi is too much involved in fruitive activities. He is involved in material activities. He is involved in fruitive activities, in the course of which one has to commit so many sinful activities that perpetually it is bondage. So in the beginning, Narada tried to give him good lessons. He even gave a long story of King Puranjan, how the living entity tries to enjoy in this human form of life, in the city of 9 gates. But still, Narada saw that King Prachin Barhi has understood this whole knowledge, but still he is involved so much in fruitive activities, in that mentality, he is not able to give it up. So further, with so much patience, Narada again relates to him another important allegory. He says, my dear king, search out a deer in your life. Search out a deer in your life which is in a very precarious condition. This deer is roaming around in a very nice garden, and he is accompanied with his she deer. He is so much enamored by the green grass which he is eating in this garden. He is so much enamored by this beautiful garden, the beautiful aroma which is coming from this garden. He is so much enamored by the humming sound of the bumblebees. that he is not able to see that right in front there is a tiger, which is flesh eater. He is waiting to jump and finish off this deer. And he is unaware that on the back side, behind the tree, there is a hunter sitting. He is ready with his bow and arrow any time to shoot this deer. You see. So Narada explains that every living entity's condition who is enamored by this material world is similar to this deer. So the example there it is given that he is so enamored by the flower of that garden. So the example of flower is given that when we are in our youth, we are like flowers. The woman looks like flower, beautiful, aromatic, isn't it? The flower, when it is fresh, it is very beautiful to look at and it is very aromatic. But as the days pass by, the flower loses its beauty and it loses its aroma. Similarly, our materialistic so-called happiness life, so-called family life of materialistic happiness, centered around sexual pleasure, beauty of woman, slowly comes to an end. That which looks very, very tasteful in the beginning becomes distasteful as the life passes by. But of course, Maya has many other equipments. Later on, our affection turns to children. And that is compared to the humming sound of bumblebees. So this deer is so enamored, and Narada says from tongue to genital he is enamored. This is how materialistic life is. Wife is considered to be so entangling because she satisfies the tongue, she satisfies the genital. So the person becomes so much enamored, he forgets that right in front is a tiger and backside is a hunter. The tiger is compared to the passing, every day passing of the days is considered like the tiger. And the hunter behind is considered to be imminent death, which is awaiting every living entity. See? So, Narada is telling to Prachin Barihi that don't waste time. Don't waste time in doing all these different kinds of fruitive activities by which you may be elevated to heavenly planets. So he's saying, give up this so-called your family life and Hamsa Sharanam, take refuge of the lotus feet of great devotees of the Lord who are Paramahamsas. Then you will be able to understand the value of this human form of life. So there, in that context, Prabhupada quotes this verse from 11th Canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, explaining that before death comes, one should quickly utilize this human form of life to obtain the purpose for which it is given. So it's a very famous verse. Many times Prabhupada quotes this. Labdhava sudurlabham idam bahu sambhavante. After obtaining labdhava, sudurlabham, this very, very rare human form of life, bahu sambhavante, after many, many births. Bahu means many, sambhavante means births. Manushyam, this human form of life, it is arthadam, it is very meaningful. You see, of course Krishna explains it is anityam. Anityam apiha, even though it is anitya, this contrast is used, that like any other form of life, this is also anitya, no doubt. This is also temporary. But difference is, others is anitya and anarthadam. It is meaningless. Animal forms of life, it is temporary and it has no meaning also. But this human form of life, it is anityam but arthadam. It is very meaningful. So, dhira, sober man, who is not foolish, sober man, what he should do? Turnam yateta. Turnam means immediately, without waiting, without wasting time. Yateta means he should endeavor. He should quickly endeavor. Why? One may think, no, I have long life. Why quickly? Why it is required I should quickly endeavor? I am very young man, isn't it? Somebody may think. So Krishna is saying, Bhagavatam is saying, na patet anumrityu yavat. Before this body which is going to fall one day, before it falls prey to the death, before it falls down, one should quickly utilize this human form of life and endeavor for what? Nishresaya. One should endeavor for the ultimate benefit which this human form of life can give us. And further it says, don't waste your time in Vishaya, sense enjoyment. Vishaya khalu sarvatrasya. In all conditions of life, Vishayas can be obtained. Why we should utilize this human form of life for Vishayas? So this is the importance, and Prabhupada is saying in this human form of life, difference is by controlling the senses, by yogic process of regulation, one can understand the position of the self, one can understand the super self, one can understand this world, the interrelation. Otherwise, there is no meaning to this human form of life. So Prabhupada is saying here, this materialistic way of life, everything is topsy-turvy. Why? It is because of uncontrolled mind and senses, and it is possible to control mind and senses only in this human form of life. So we'll stop with this Granth Raj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.